Buddy,
Great.
What's up? What's up, people?
what's up? Okay, so we have a few folks on the camera. Do we have everybody? We have almost everybody. Lynn is joining as well. Great. Kalim, I guess it looks like we're going to be all here. So I'm Loic, and I'm really, really excited for today. This is like a super advanced, super intimate session that we have with Frank. I believe some of you have joined us for some of the free sessions, maybe some of the events we used to organize until last year, because this year is kind of challenging. The spirit of Music Expo, for those who have been either attending our live streams or the event, is that we're very casual, but we kick ass at our craft, at least people we invite, personally know. But really the idea is to be as participative as possible. Here we're going to have a couple of hours with Frank. We'll probably take breaks about mixing techniques and production techniques, workflow, and he's going to provide feedback on a couple of tracks that were submitted by some of you, which is super exciting. I was hoping to submit my own track, but I didn't have time to do it. So super casual. My name is Loic. What I love is for any one of you, we encourage everyone to share their camera so we feel like we're in the same room, but you don't have to. If you do, please be decently dressed. Okay, we don't want to see any nude. We also are super inclusive and encourage everybody to create a safe and welcoming environment. I think it's going to be easy because we're supposed to be 12 today. So I encourage everybody to respect that. But at the same time, we want to give a chance to introduce yourself. I'm going to start first with Frank, and then maybe we're going to go around. Frank and Anna, so you meet the people from on the Music Expo side, and then everybody's on the call. I'd love to hear from you, your name, where you're calling from, and anything, what type of music you make. We'd love to know more about you. So Frank, I pass it to you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening for everybody, wherever you are. My name is Frank Socorro. Obviously, hopefully some of you guys know who I am. If you don't, well, I've been an engineer for 20 years, and I met Loic a few years back for Music Expo, and we've been best friends ever since. And he keeps talking me into these things, so I keep coming back. And hopefully I give you guys some really cool information that will actually be able to use and make your product better.
Anna?
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm head of operations for Music Expo. And I just wanted to say thank you all for joining. I'm really excited to hear what you've been working on.
Do you want to just call them out, Loic?
Yeah, Chad, I'm going to go by the screen. So Chad, you're on the top left.
Yeah, no, my name's Chad. I'm actually a musician, so I'm not a mixer or anything, but I wanted to learn. I'm here to learn, what's involved with creating your own productions, because that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Sure.
And whether it's mixing or whether you're playing a piano or whether you're doing whatever, I just came to get a better vibe as to what I'm doing, what you're doing. Maybe I can learn something.
Cool.
And where are you dialing from? Sorry, I sound like a radio. Where are you video conferencing from?
Oh, from Wilmington, Massachusetts.
Sweet. KOSHL.
What's up, everyone? So I'm in San Francisco. I actually went to the last two music expos in person. They were amazing, super well run. I loved them. I'm planning on coming every year. So yeah, I'm a producer and songwriter. I produce more like kind of indie electronic pop type stuff, a couple different genres. And mixing is like the bane of my existence. I've been trying to get better at it, taking a bunch of courses, but I realize that it's a constant thing that you gotta work on and practice and learn. So I'm super excited to get like some hands-on feedback. I think it's gonna be really valuable. So thanks for putting this on.
Zap? What's up?
Zap, I'm gonna make it short. I'm in Florida. I'm a producer. I've been doing music for a few years. And I'm here to steal Frank's signal chain. Well, now I know Frank for a little bit. He's a good guy, so I'm out here to learn from him and what he's doing today.
100%. 100%. Well, great to have you, man.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks.
Matt Hatter, is that correct? Can you hear us? We can hear you. This is actually a good exercise to check everybody's audio.
Yeah.
Let's try again. Matt, we can continue, and then we come back to you when you think you can give us the green light.
Yeah.
Oh, we hear you.
There you go.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I just had to switch my, I still have my inbox plugged in. I ain't have a mic to it. You hear me now?
Yeah, this is why it took us 10 minutes. We dialed in 10 minutes late. We were trying to figure out loop back and all of that. So yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, yeah, that's my stage name. I'm an aspiring musician. I went to school at SAE under Frank. That's my guy. He's like the best guy ever, and he's super raw. So I'm just trying to, I've been mixing for a while. I've done stuff for other people. I really believe in my music, but I'm stuck. It's hard for me to start projects and know like the mixing. So I'm just trying to get my bearings and see what's up.
This is awesome. And you're calling us from Florida as well?
Yeah, I'm in Miami.
Sweet.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Ayo? And I apologize if I butchers everybody's name, you know. I really apologize. I'll promise I'll do better by the end. Once you tell me how to pronounce it, I promise I'll do better. Same thing, we can hear you. No, still can't hear you. So we'll go to Lien. Lien, is that correct?
Can you hear me?
Barely, yeah.
Barely, okay. Maybe
It's because you're by the beach.
Yeah, my name is Leanne. I am primarily a singer-songwriter, but I've been working on learning how to produce on my own. So yeah, I'm just here to learn more about producing your own stuff, mixing your own stuff. And I am based in San Francisco.
Oh, lovely. Well, all right. Miami, San Francisco, Mass. Beautiful places. Great. Ayo, is it working for you?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is like I'm mainly like a producer trying to mix also. I've been trying to improve on that. I've been doing like mainly like pop stuff, indie stuff lately. I'm based out of San Francisco, so I'm just here to learn new stuff and just, you know, meet everybody and see how everybody operates, you know.
Great.
Awesome.
Great. All right. So now we're going down to Kalim.
Hey, my name's Kalim, and I'm a producer based here in San Francisco. You know, I mainly make electronic dance music, things influenced by house, acid, synthwave, and that kind of thing. And the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot more producing with a lot of discipline and putting out tracks, and you know, just continuing to work on my craft and learn what I can from people who've done it before and become much better at it than I am.
Cool. And I'm going to call you by your username here, BRH. You're on mute, and you can stay on mute. We don't want to put you on the spot. You can just wave or say hello in the chat. Let us know. Okay. Well, guys and ladies, we're super excited to have you today. We're going to try to figure out how to run this, but the topic of the day is definitely Frank's going to go over a couple of sessions. And Frank, you're going to tell them how we set up for the audio and all of that. Okay, cool.
Yep.
So the only thing I have to tell you is I see that Mass, Florida, San Francisco, and some folks who are familiar with our actual events, we are bringing Music Expo, a version of Music Expo, online on May 15 and 16. It's going to be about 10, 15 masterclasses, panels, discussion, product demos, All of you, you follow up with Hannah and I, you will get 50% to the ticket. Okay. This is we want to see you again. If you like today's session, tickets won't be expensive, but really, but yeah, we want to invite you, give you a great offer. So if you want to come back, if you like today's session and you want to come back to the big music expo that we're going to do in a couple of weeks, you're invited and we'll give you a discount as well. Make sure you follow our social media, Music Expo SF, on IG, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm sure most of you do it. And yeah, without further ado, I'll pass it to Frank, who's going to explain the setup, so you can really enjoy this conversation. We have you on the camera. We can keep you on the camera. He was going to share his screen and his audio for asking questions. I think there's a functionality to raise your hand, and so I think maybe that's what we can use, Frank.
Yeah.
And we stop the music and we unmute, but really the idea is to be as interactive as possible, like if we were in an actual music expo. Okay?
Correct. Okay, cool. Thanks, Loic. All right, guys. So a couple of just muted me, Loic. Yeah, thank you. He's like,
wrong button.
So one of the things that we're doing, guys, that's a little bit different than the last one is I'm actually going to be sending you guys a high quality stream, and I'm going to paste the link right now in the chat. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, if you're on your computer, you'll see the chat box and you can actually pull it up, and I'm going to paste this link in there. If you click on that link and if you copy it and paste it in your browser, and the browser we recommend is Chrome, Loic? Yeah. We recommend Chrome. So if you open up that link, you will get a higher quality stream. That's what's happening in Zoom. Okay. So if you click on that link and you open it in Chrome, you'll see that you'll see the transmission and you'll be able to kind of open it up and you should be able to hear me. Now, what's important about that is that we don't have our mics on if it's coming out of your speakers. So, because that could cause a crazy feedback loop. So I just want those of you who want to do the high quality stream, just go ahead and kind of test it out. Maybe open it up in your browser, do a test, and kind of maybe mute your mics.
Mute your mics.
I hear myself now.
I hear myself
That
now.
means people are getting it.
People are getting it.
It's like a 3-second delay.
Second delay.
I can't hear you, Luke.
Okay.
What I would recommend is maybe when we don't play the audio, to mute Listento.
Yeah.
So we can have all the conversation. So let me show everybody how it looks like.
Yeah, share your screen, Loic.
Everybody sees my screen?
Yeah.
So Frank, speak, because I think you go through the stream.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
So you see there's a level, and what we can do is I can mute, and now I'm going to hear him only once in Zoom. Okay? So I recommend when we don't play the music, you mute here, and when he's going to start the music, unmute so you can have the high definition audio.
How do you mute on Zoom?
On Zoom, there's supposed to be a control panel at the bottom where there's a microphone, and you can click mute. Or I can mute you. You tell me.
I mean, like, how would I mute Zoom and listen to the browser?
Okay. That's actually a great question.
Well, when we're talking about the audio, Loic, you could just mute me on Zoom.
That's true.
The problem is that you won't be able to record the audio.
No, I don't want to mute you, but he's right. Because we don't want to hear it twice.
So you guys can mute me though on your end, like if you mute me.
Oh, because you would be the only one talking.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they should be able to mute me. Like.
So how do I just mute you though?
On my picture, you should be able to mute me.
Nah, it's not showing up.
Yeah, it's only me.
This is frustrating.
Okay.
All right, we're figuring this out. Yeah, so you want to hear only the audio here. Hold on. Oh, so you go to audio setting, And what you can do, I don't know
In
if you
Zoom?
see my screen, but you're supposed to be able to, do you see my screen?
Yes.
We only see the Safari.
Okay, hold on.
There was a delay in mine too when I opened that up, so it played your audio here, but it also played that audio.
Yes,
And there's
that's
a
correct.
delay in the audio. Is it supposed to be like that?
Yes, yes, that's correct, Chad. It's sending
Okay.
because the audio is going through Zoom, so everybody can see it if you don't have Audio Mover. But if you want to upgrade to higher quality, you can go to Audio Mover. And there's a slight delay with Audio Mover, and I encourage you to listen to it for the audio because we're talking about a mix session and it's better to have a higher quality. So give me a second. I'm going to share this. Hold on, huh? Okay, so now everybody sees my my screen here. So I clicked on this button here on mute. I went to audio setting. And now what you can do is you can slide the output volume. And that's basically how you control the volume on Zoom with this slider.
We can't see the Zoom screen.
Really?
Yeah. But if you
Yeah.
guys go to your audio settings in Zoom, which is under the little gear cog, you can turn down the Zoom audio.
Where's the gear card?
Or you could just go to preferences.
Okay.
So you could just turn on the speaker output.
Perfect.
How's that working for everybody? Check 1 2 1 2 3 in the place to be.
Now I spotlight you, Frank, since you're the presenter.
Thank you. How are we doing?
Good.
Great.
Good. So do me a favor, guys. Once you're ready to go, just mute your mics so I don't feed back into myself.
I can mute everybody.
But can I get maybe in the chat, everybody type a number 1 when you're ready, so we can.
I'm still getting that feedback. I thought I turned off the speakers in the preferences.
If you don't.
So I'm still hearing you twice, Frank.
Just in the settings for your Zoom, when it says output, do you see a button that says test speaker?
Yeah.
Okay, under that there's a slider. Is it all the way down?
The output volume?
Mm-hmm.
But it just now I can't hear anything.
So, but is your stream muted still from the one in Chrome?
You said what?
In Chrome, is the stream muted?
No.
And you're seeing the meters move?
Yeah.
So you should be hearing it. It should be coming out of your whatever your audio output is on your computer.
Another option that's a bit more radical is you can, if you click on the mute button and look at the preference, you can leave computer audio. But then you will hear only the listento. So I recommend maybe that's what you do, and you just reactivate it when you want to talk.
I don't know. It's not working for me. Cause I'm still like when I do it, I'm not hearing anything.
You won't hear me. You will hear only Frank.
No, I don't. That's what I'm saying. Like I knew you was talking just now, but when I had when I left the audio and when I did the preferences and the Zoom, I couldn't hear anything. Like it turned down all my settings.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Okay, so I think the best to do is leave computer audio. So unfortunately, I cannot show you this, but in Zoom, leave computer audio. So you will basically have only the image from Zoom, and then all the audio will come from Listenso, and it will be only Frank. And then maybe if you have a question, use the Q&A question or dial back in to ask your question.
Does that make sense to everybody?
I don't know. When I press leave audio, I can't hear anybody, so I didn't hear what he
Yes,
said.
that's normal because you're leaving the audio from Zoom. So the only thing you will hear is the Listento. So if there's nothing happening on Listento, you won't hear it. It will have to be Frank speaking or playing music so you can hear it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so you hear me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, leaving and joining computer audio does a trick of muting and unmuting for me. Thank you, Lian. Thank you guys for being patient too. This is kind of an experiment.
Yeah, and we figure it would be nice to hear a high definition audio, but we also, the reason why we're going through this trouble is because to have both audio. So so we're recording the session, so we will be able to upload the session and you'll be able to watch it as well. So that's why we're going through this effort. So I appreciate the patience. Yeah. So like that, you can rewatch the session later if you want.
You can every night before you go to sleep, you can just watch me and just my soothing voice.
All right, I'm going to mute myself. Why don't we get into what you have to tell?
Cool. All right, guys. So again, thank you for being here. This is amazing. I really appreciate everybody who's here today, and I appreciate the music that we got sent. So the first track that I'm going to start with, and obviously you guys know there's a chat box. You can kind of put your questions. Are we going to have the Q&A box again, Loic? Is it going to be open? There's also a Q&A box where you can kind of post the questions. I can't see the Q&A thing right now, Loic, so I don't know if I have to do something. Oh, it's only chat. Okay, so no Q&A. So if you guys have a question, please just type it in the chat. You guys, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little chat box. You can type right in there. Okay, all right, because it's not a webinar. This is kind of like a group thing. Okay, cool. So the track that I'm going to start with actually comes from Albert, aka Mr. Mad Hatter. So I'm going to start with that track first. I'm going to share my screen in Pro Tools, and I'm going to play it so you guys can hear it, and then I'm going to kind of talk about what he did, and then hopefully offer him some suggestions on how to kind of get the mix, because he contacted me, told me he wasn't really happy with the mix. So hopefully I can kind of help him out with that.
Don't judge me, y'all.
We're not here to judge. We're here to learn. All right. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Cool. Does everybody see my screen? Type a 1 if you see it. You have to tell me. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Looks like everybody's seeing my Pro Tools screen. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is I have this track soloed. So I'm going to play this. So what Albert sent me is a song that he created. And I'm glad that he sent this because this is really common nowadays where people are recording to a 2-track, which is super cool, and it makes your life a lot easier when you have to do a mix. However, you're at the mercy of whoever created the 2-track. So whatever mix they put on that 2-track, when they created that 2-track, typically they are not worried, or sometimes not. I should rephrase that. Sometimes the person creating the 2-track is trying to make their beat sound as good as possible, and they're not always considering the fact that somebody might have to sing on this. So a lot of times what I find with 2-tracks is that the producer doesn't leave a lot of space for the vocal. Okay, and this makes it really difficult to mix because a lot of time you run into situations where it's kind of really cluttered in that really important kind of vocal frequency range. Does anybody know the frequency range of the vocal? You can type it in or you can chime in. Anybody? I can't hear anybody, but if you're talking. But okay, so I'll tell you guys anyway. 2 to 12. Actually, that's kind of like on the higher end of the vocal, but your vocal actually can sometimes, depending on how Barry White you are, you can hit 100 to 200 hertz. So you have this very wide spectrum of the vocal. The vocal can be anywhere from 100 hertz to have stuff all the way up into the 12 kilohertz area, depending on the vocal. Obviously, females who have higher voices will be more in the higher end, and the males will be more on the lower end. The kind of smack dab in the middle is somewhere between 1 and 2K. So most vocals live in kind of this like 500 to 3K, I would say. Like, that's the meat and potatoes of the vocal. Unfortunately for human beings, that is also the point of our hearing where we hear things the loudest. So what does that mean? That means that when we're making music, we tend to put a lot of instruments in this frequency range because it's pleasing to us, because we hear it loud. So anything that we feel is important, or melody wise, as producers, a lot of times we put it in that frequency range, which, although, you know, makes it really cool for your track, makes it detrimental to a song being sung on top of it, because now that melody idea that you put, that was a cool flute thing, is living in the same frequency as the vocal, and now when the vocalist is there, it makes it really difficult for those things to go together. So that means that you have to make space. So as a mixer, it's my job to find a space for that. So for those of you who do production and are sending your tracks out to artists so that they can sing it, this is something you need to keep in mind. Like, if somebody's going to sing on this, you need to leave space in that frequency range for that person to sing. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far? Did I talk too much? Did I blow your mind just now? All right, cool. So I'm going to play Albert's track, and we're going to listen to it all the way through, and then we're going to start talking about the different sections and kind of what's going on. Is everybody hearing this? We're not getting audio? We should. Oh, I know why. I know why. Because I have to do this. Sorry, guys. We were kind of messing around with a couple of things before. Now you're getting on the right.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green and show up. I won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now. Ooh, I've been told about my whole life. Go to the close, they wanna know mine. Like, why you seem so different? Got a front row dancing. I proceed to the mission, cruising down Linwood District. Hop another zip, it's about 3 to 4 flavors. Cloud 9 move straight to the paper. I keep a 9 to 5 so I don't take a pay cut, but I can never live my life out as a waiter. I gotta grind, yeah, but I'ma get mine. Something major, pull up with my day ones. Got no patience for the brazen, elevate cause I ain't who they been on. But now there ain't no pressure when the pressure's on. Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green and show up.
For sure.
I won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir.
I won't let them kill my vibe.
Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
Let me do me. You do you, we do we. If anybody down, I just wrote that Leeward Green. Sure enough, I'm gonna be high up on the scene. I'm talking HD, real life, no screens. I'm talking make me eat a lot and go to sleep. I got the OZ, won't see a whole week. Won't see another rap other than a Swisher Sweet. Now picture this, just bobbing to the beat. Ignorance is bliss, joy riding jet skis. Travel around the country smoking everybody weed. Viewing everybody hood, smoking everybody dreams. Living, give you real life, no gimmick on sight. I'ma kill it, should've never let me finish. Just let me do my thing, God, let it do my thing, God, then it do my thing, start winning.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show up. Leroy Green, yeah, you know what I mean. Won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir. thing, let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now. Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that leeway green, yeah, show love. I won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
All right. That was our boy Mad Hatter. Little El DeBarge vibes. I see you. I see you. All right, so let's talk about what's going. Yeah, if you guys give our boy a little round of applause, you can throw a little clap emoji there in the chat or just type clap. So let's kind of. I'm gonna jump into this real quick. So I want to real quick because like Albert kind of like called me about this a little bit before. He was like, well, you know, I'm trying to mix this, but he's like, but I only have like these plugins. So, you know, I understand that obviously people working out there, like you don't have all the plugins. Like sometimes you watch a tutorial and they're showing, like even me, like I'm guilty of like showing plugins that I know that most people aren't gonna buy, especially if you're starting out. Like, you know, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm gonna kind of stick to that theme. Like I'm only gonna use the stuff that's in Pro Tools to kind of show hopefully help Albert with what's going on here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the track. Sorry, I had this reverb muted because actually it's it like, you know what, let me just do this for now. I'm gonna send this to the same bus that he has all his vocals going to. That way it doesn't interfere. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so this track is actually, the track sounds pretty good. It's not, you know, it's not crazy out of balance or anything. But one of the things that I want to let you guys know is that when you're working with the 2-track, and I want to kind of do this just to kind of see where we're at, you can see that this 2-track is already pretty loud. Okay, Albert put on a compressor, actually 2 different compressors. But neither one of them is actually doing a lot. So typically, like I see this, like people make stuff and they just do stuff because they've seen people do it before. Like if it doesn't need it, like don't do it. Like if you put it on and you bypass it and you can't tell the difference, then just scrap it. Like don't do something just because you've seen somebody else do it. Like it should be actually making a difference in your track. Okay. Albert said something. The second one is a sidechain. Oh, from the vocal. Got it. Okay. I wonder if others can hear Frank pretty well. The music sounds nice and loud, but Frank speaking volume. Oh, I can turn myself up. Let me do. How's this? Is that better? Or I can turn up my mic pre. Boop. 1 2 1 2. Is that better? Awesome. All right, cool. Softer. Okay, let's split the difference there. All right, cool. All right, so let me just kind of maybe move my mic in a little bit. All right. So one of the things that I want to talk about is something that, you know, back in the days as a mixer, a lot of people would use loops. And when you use loops, obviously you don't have the internal parts of the loop with you. So you'd have to split the loop up into kind of like a multi-band. And this is something that I still do when I get sent a 2-track to mix. So one of the things that I'll do is I'll duplicate the original track like 2 times sometimes. And I'll do this. And then what I'll do is I'll filter each one of these a little bit different to get different parts of the loop. Now for this one, actually, I think it would benefit to just do 2. So what I'll do is I'll take, you see, this is the sidechain one, so I don't need this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one and I'm going to like filter out all the highs on this. So I'm going to use something, where's the Avid? Boom. So by doing this, I can actually now have a little bit more low end in the track without actually EQing the track here. which sometimes can which sometimes makes it a little bit difficult when you're starting a process if you do a bunch of EQing on the actual track. So I like doing this because this almost works kind of like a parallel where the original track stays the same, but you have these additional tracks which can help support that. One of the reasons that I do this is I feel that because of that thing I was talking about earlier, where we kind of hear things in the middle, the loudest, and we try to put everything in there because that's the way our hearing works, that we actually lose one of the cool things that you can actually do with audio, which is make your mix really tall and really wide. When you make your mix really tall and really wide, you leave a lot of space for the vocal. Okay, or whatever the main thing is. So I try to do that. So one of the things I like to do is do this, and then if I'm gonna drop this really low for you guys, and then I'm gonna play the original track, and then I'm gonna start bringing in that other one. Can you guys hear that difference? I mean, I don't know if you can hear it through your laptops or through your headphones, but that's going to bring in like a nice bit of like subharmonic kind of information that now makes my track feel like there's a lower bass. When you have a lower bass, there's going to be a contrast, because if you have a lower bass, that means that the distance between the lows and the highs becomes greater, which makes the record seem taller. So now it's not all living in this area right here. Now I've extended the length, the low of my bass, which makes my high seem a lot taller. If I wanted to, I could increase the do a second one where I just increase the highs. But what I could do here for you, Albert, is I could then use, and actually I'll just use the same EQ just so I don't have to look for it, and we'll turn this off. And then what I could do is I could kind of bring up as a shelf, just give this a little bit of a kind of a boost here. And then what you could do also is you could give this kind of frequency range right here, we could give this a little dip, because although the middle of your voice is a little bit higher, and I'm just going this based off of your vocal, the middle of your voice is a little bit higher, there's a low mid in your voice that I think it would be detrimental to not have peak out. So I don't want the track eating that up. So again, we're just kind of carving out a little bit of space for that vocal. So I'll bypass everything I did. So put the low back in, put that high. Okay, so I feel like right now my balance is already kind of working out a little bit better. So what I could do is now I could send both of these. And obviously you could do this in any DAW. I'm gonna call this the track aux. And I'm gonna send this out to the same bus. Cool, I'm gonna bypass this. Oops. Okay, and now this is all going to this aux. And then here, because this is a 2-track, I could do some additional processing. I could do a compressor there, maybe do some EQing, almost like if it was kind of a little bit of a pre-master. The aux is to route both of those versions, Albert, to the new aux so that they're combined together. So if I want to process all of them or both of the tracks together, I just do it on this aux. And that way I can, later on, when you're done with your mix and you need to print an acapella, you just got to mute this track. Or if you need to print like an instrumental, then you mute everything else and that's the track you play for. So yeah, so now what I could do is that this compressor that you used for your sidechain, I'm just going to put it on that aux. So instead of it doing just mainly to the main part, it'll just do it to the overall mix that I did. Okay. If you felt like when you filtered out this track, like it wasn't enough, this is a perfect place to add something like a subharmonic synthesizer. Some of you have Waves, might have Submarine, or you might have, maybe you have UA and you have the, what is it called? The Voice of God plugin, or maybe Metric Halo's Boom, which, by the way, if you guys are looking for a subharmonic synthesizer, Metric Halo has one called Boom, and I think it's free. Not subatomic. Subharmonic. Subatomic is something else. All right, cool. So once we get our track kind of like, you know, in a kind of general area, I always like to watch my volume. So if I play this, I see that I'm peaking pretty high up here, and when I come down to my master, it's pretty loud. Right? Our track is taking up a lot of space currently. So what does this mean? This means that I'm gonna have to push my vocal a lot louder. So typically when you get a 2-track nowadays, especially those of us who are doing like, you know, any type of electronic music, so whether it be R&B, hip hop, you know, any type of dance music, any type of like ambient, usually a lot of those tracks get limited a lot, so they're really loud. And this is for you guys who are vocalists, or those of you who are musicians who have to add music to other people's tracks. It typically comes in really loud, which means you try to play or sing or put everything on top of that, which it's not necessary. What you can do is actually kind of bring this down, right? So I'll bring this down a couple of dB, and I'll just kind of like take a look at this. So I'll leave this meter up here so we can see it. I'm actually going to hide this. I don't have a target for a peak, but I kind of try to get it bouncing in this area between the 3 and the 6 usually, you know, and if later on I need to bring it up, I'll bring it up. But while I'm mixing, I like to give myself that space. If then later on I find myself bringing up the track, at least I have the space to. But I want to make sure that my track is not all the way up here slamming, and then I'm trying to sit vocals on top of that, because that usually ends not well. Okay, so I'm going to unmute these tracks now, and I'm going to mute. Albert has different sections, which is a great way to kind of set up your tracks, especially when you have lots of different vocals or different parts. So he has an intro section, he has a hook section, he has his verses with, I'm assuming, are dubs or ad-libs or in and outs, as some people call them. And then there's some additional ad-libs here, which I'm assuming are some sort of like singing ad-libs that he has here. So I'm going to start with what I like to start with is when I'm mixing a song, I like to mix the hook first. Why? Because it's typically the most important part of a song where they're singing, unless it's like some jazz scat album that you're making. Is anybody here making jazz? Except for Loic. I can tell by your voice that you make jazz. So let's listen to Albert's hook with the track that we have here.
Just got me an ounce like roll up, some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show up. I won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir. Just let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
Okay, cool. So those vocals actually sound really good. What did you use to record those, Albert? What mic are you using? Well, one of the MXL? Like the black and gold one? It's actually not that boomy. You want to show it? You got it? He's actually going to go get his mic. Cool. While he's doing that, so Let's listen to the vocals individually and see what's actually going on, and then I'm actually going to mute some of the effects.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir. Just let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
Okay, it's a MXL 990. Okay, cool. That's actually a really popular mic that a lot of people use. It comes in at a great price point, and it actually doesn't sound, it's not that bad of a sounding mic. So those of you who are in the kind of sometimes in a market for a mic, is it 90 or 900? Like, is it 90? Yeah, but anyways, like those mics usually 990. Yeah. So just quick aside for a lot of people, a lot of the microphones that come out in the kind of a lower price range, a lot of those mics are the exact same microphone. They're just branded different by different companies. So some of the like the lower like Audio Technica stuff sometimes, or anything that's like a large diaphragm condenser will sometimes be the exact same components as like an MXL mic. That's why the MXL mic, did we lose audio, like? Oh, that's why the MXL mic is actually moddable. There's a lot of mods for MXLs to make them actually sound a little bit better. So I know we kind of went off on a tangent there, but that's kind of important stuff to know for those of you trying to record at home. All right, so I'm going to bypass what Albert is doing here, and I want to listen to his raw vocal here. He has a de-esser, and then on the overall aux, he had some EQ rolling off a lot of the bottom, boosting up some like 2 to 3K here, and then a big boost here at 7 all the way out. Okay. He also said he did some clip gain here. I can see that. And then he has also a compressor here, which is doing, looks like it's a 3-to-1 ratio, but the threshold's really low. Okay. So yeah, Albert said he did some clip gains on plosives. Okay, so kind of cutting down on those things. So let's listen to the raw vocal.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir. Just let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
Okay, this actually, I don't actually hear a lot that I would do to this vocal EQ wise. I think it actually sounds pretty good. And I think that this de-esser that you had here, Albert,
just got me
might be doing a little bit too much, and I think you're losing a little bit of that little bit of that detail up in the high end. This is set at 7.9 kilohertz, which means that when that S hits, it's, and the way you have it set up, it's cutting everything above there. So there, in this de-esser, you don't have a lot of options, unfortunately, for that. But there are de-essers out there which will let you do like a band where it just cuts the S. Just really quick, I know that I was saying I was going to stick to Pro Tools, but I'll give you guys a list of some of my favorite de-essers, which actually get the job done really well. So one of them is actually the Waves de-esser. I think it's this one. Yeah, so this de-esser, I typically will set like this, so you guys can see the change here. So instead of doing everything at a specific frequency, it kind of does like a band, so it'll cut everything in that band. And I set this to wide, and then I find the frequency. Now, one of the things about a de-esser that you should do is when you're listening to the track, you should put it in this sidechain mode. And why am I not hearing audio? Oh, this way. So you guys hear that I'm only hearing the high end right now? Is everybody hearing that? Is it just like, it sounds like a tin can? Okay, so what I do is I try to find the S's from that. And then from there, once I find my S,
just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough.
Okay, and I'll do things like that. So if you don't have the Waves de-esser, There are other de-essers out there that you can find that kind of have that thing. And one of the things that I actually do is I'll use two de-essers. Why? Because every sound that we work with has a fundamental frequency, and then it has harmonics of that frequency. Does everybody understand what that means? Hit me with a 1 if you do. Hit me with a 0 if you don't. Cool. Okay, cool. So it seems like a lot of you guys understand that. A 0 from Loic. Loic wants me to go through it. Okay, so I'll give you a visual representation just because it's great. So this is I'm gonna put a fab filter just for frequency kind of analyzing sake. Yeah, for those in the back who are quiet. So if I play this vocal, oh, sorry.
Boy Green, yeah, shown up.
So you can see like,
Boy Green, yeah, shown up.
so you guys see like his fundamental frequency of what he's singing is somewhere down here, but then there's harmonics, and those harmonics tend to get closer together.
Let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing,
Okay, so everything that he's singing has a fundamental note, and then it's got harmonics of that note. Okay, when you have S's, it's the same thing. Whenever you have an S sound that's a lot, it's too sibilant, it's too pronounced in your track, in your vocal track. You gotta try to find the fundamental, kind of like the lowest part of that S, and then I'll de-S that one, and then I'll try to find a higher portion of that S that's also abrasive. So that's why I usually use two de-essers. So for men, it'll be somewhere usually between 7 and 8K will be the kind of like harsh low S. And then sometimes around 10, 11, there's a higher S, like a really, really bright. And what that does is once I cut those S's and bring them down, it allows me to then later on turn up the high frequencies of that voice so that I can make it nice and bright without being too harsh with the S's. Does that make sense? Let me see some ones. Are we good? Do we have any questions as of right now? Anything you need me to go over again? Loic didn't know about this. Now you know, Loic. Does anybody have any questions? Anything you want to talk about? Yeah, Loic can maybe unmute everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to unmute everybody if you have any questions.
If you can, guys, just mute the other stream. Albert was asking, how do I find that S without the filter? You just got to listen to it. So you got to use your ears and find that frequency. I think on this one, you actually have this listen option, which does the exact same thing. So you can... Yeah, you would use the plugin twice. So you would do like a lower one. So I'll just do it. I'll show you guys. So
I'll unmute everybody, but feel free to ask. We can go to questions, and if you feel more comfortable asking and having a conversation, we can do that as well, guys. Okay?
Yeah. Do you guys want to? Anybody got any questions you want to throw at me? So Albert, yeah, you would use that plugin twice. Anybody else?
So show it, Frank, and then we go to questions.
Okay.
Okay.
So here it is. I'm going to bring up the... And then I'll do another one. So I'll take this off a listen and then listen. Okay. So I have two. This was actually really high. It's at 14.8. It's one of the characteristics of some of those lower priced condensers. They tend to, because they want to sound expensive and what everybody thinks is clean, tends to be a lot of high end. Leanne asked, do I put two de-essers on each vocal or on a group of them? It depends. So if like in this section, like Albert kind of has like a main hook, And then there's kind of like, these are, I can see they're panned, so that means that they're kind of like the background part of the hook. If this hook is going to be super loud, this one track, this lead hook track is going to be super loud, I will do it there, and then I would perhaps then do another de-esser on the background one. So I might even, if I was mixing this, I might even separate this main hook track from the other ones and just kind of have it almost like a lead and EQ it like the lead. To kind of make that one stick out, and I might double de-ess that one. And then on the hook ones, I might do one de-esser, but I might make it really aggressive. One of the reasons that I do that, and this is a great question, Lian, so I'm going to talk for half an hour. No, I'm kidding. So one of the reasons that I will do that is because if the vocals aren't all sung like perfectly together and the S's happen at different times, in the mix, it goes and it's like this weird kind of multiple S. So I'll aggressively de-ess the backgrounds because I don't need them to pronounce their S's. I just need them to support the vocal harmonically in the back. So typically I will very aggressively de-ess backgrounds. And then the lead, I'll do 2 de-essers to kind of like still get all the detail, but not have the S's. Does that make sense? Cool. We got any more questions? Again, Glory can open up the mics. KOSHL, where should the S's go in the vocal chain? I usually put those first. I put those early. Maybe not always first. Sometimes I compress first, and then I notice that it brings out the S's, and I might compress. It really depends on the vocal. I try to do repair stuff first on my vocals. So like cutting off the low end, like doing a filter, kind of like Albert did here. So you guys can see here. I'll do this. I'm hearing myself. This is just really weird. So I'll have to do this. So I'll do that first, and then what I'll do is I will then maybe do a de-esser, and then maybe do some subtractive EQ where I kind of like cut out any frequencies that I don't want, and then followed by then my like stuff where I'm adding stuff. So I try to cut, fix first, and then do any additional compression EQ effects. Does that make sense?
And again, feel free to ask. If we pause, you can ask also vocally if it's easier for you.
Cool.
Just let me know if you want to. Some of you are muted, but we can unmute you if you want to talk, or you can keep asking questions in the chat, whatever you prefer.
If you guys want to talk, I think it's probably easy if they just do the hand raise thing, and then you can kind of see. All right, so let me play this.
And the hand raise, I just realized, is when we do the webinar. Here
Okay.
we're in an actual meeting, so everybody can participate.
Okay, cool. All right, so now I have found those S's on this.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, damn it.
Okay, so what I'm actually gonna do is there's actually gonna be a recording of this, Albert, which you guys will get a link to, and you'll be able to watch again. So you guys will all get it sent to you. So let me do what I was talking about, which is actually kind of send this to the Allvox and kind of make this one separate, because this one actually I think it deserves that attention. So I'll go through this, KOSHL, kind of like what I was talking about. So I'm gonna first listen to this because I don't like just putting plugins on stuff just because. I actually I try to listen to it first and figure out what it needs. So
just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
Okay, we're gonna let you do your thing, bro. So I'm gonna use one of our SSL one band EQs, and obviously if you guys work in Logic, Ableton, everybody has their default plugins, and this is something that's pretty much in every DAW. Everybody does it a little bit different, but the tools are very similar, and the ones that come in with the DAW usually tend to be very straightforward. So it's not something that has a particular sound. It's just kind of more of a tool that does a job. Okay, so I kind of cut off some of the lows there.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, shown up.
If you can hear as I bypass it, it kind of clears it up a little bit. So there were some lower frequency things in the recording, but because I have a lot of low end in my track, I don't need his low end in the vocal. It's just going to add, you know, low stuff that is not necessary and will fill up your mix. One of the analogies that I like to use about your mix bus, like your stereo bus, is imagine it like a glass, right? And imagine low end being like ice, right? Ice takes up a lot of space in that glass, right? The more ice you have, the less drink you're going to have. So when you put a lot of ice in the cup, there's less space for whatever drink you're trying to put in that cup, okay? Although you can see right through the glass and you're like, there's nothing there, it doesn't let you fill up the glass with as much liquid as you want it to. So when you have a lot of low end, you fill up your stereo bus really quickly and there's not space for all the other stuff you're trying to put in there. So I'm a big fan of a lot of low end, but you gotta have the low end that you want in there and remove any low end that you don't want in there because it's gonna fill up your glass. Does that make sense to everybody? Hit me with an amen if it does make sense. All right. So, thank you. I'm glad you love the metaphor. And I hope you can use it as you drink from your purple cup or black cup, whatever it is. So I've cut off some of that low end from him, and I could probably do to cut a little bit more, maybe even up to 100.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, shown up. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing, right?
Okay, so now that Albert, and actually I'm going to do this so I can have actually a few more inserts, because I look like I'm going to run out. So Albert, although he did some gain writing there, I'm actually going to put a compressor in it because for me, the way that I mix vocals, I tend to go for a more of a kind of pop vocal sound where the vocal's really in front, and that's just my preference. So a lot of people come to me for mixing because they're always like really happy the way the vocal sound, and I mix vocals that way because I just like how that sounds. So if you're a person that's looking for some dark, gloomy vocal, sometimes somebody will call me and I'll be like, that's not me. Like I can do it, but there's probably better people at doing that. So let me I'll just go to Avid. It'll probably make my life easier. So here we go. Boom. Dynamics 3. This is the compressor from Avid. So here we go. I'm going to set this kind of a high ratio, about 6:1. I'm going to add a very soft knee. A knee is the point from when compression starts. So when you have a kind of, can everybody see that? Does everybody see that little point there for the knee? What that means is that this is the threshold, right? Which means where the compression actually starts, right? From this point on, the compression kicks in really fast because I have a hard knee. So whenever you've seen things that say, oh, this compressor has a hard knee, that's what it means. Usually hard knees are great for like things that have really tough transients, right? So things like snares, kicks, like it's great because it gives you like a little bit of a kind of a tick right at the beginning. But for things like vocals, I like to use a softer knee. And what happens is that as my vocal starts to creep up closer to the threshold, the compression actually gradually starts to kick in until it fully crosses the threshold. So it's almost like a little bit of pre-compression before the compression actually kicks in, which makes the compression actually feel a little bit smoother. So for vocals, I like to use things with a soft knee. That's why when you see people doing mix tutorials, a lot of times you'll see them using things like LA2As. LA2A is an opto style compressor, which has a very soft knee. So for things like bass, vocal, like pads, that transition into the compression is very smooth and feels very natural. So it comes off like a lot better sounding. So I'm gonna kind of soften the knee here for his vocal. And
just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
okay, so I'm doing like about 3 dB of compression. I think it could actually take a little bit more.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right.
And there's actually some stuff on his alt box I'm gonna bypass for now, so we can just listen to this.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough.
And then what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna bypass everything I did.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir.
Do you hear how it's a little bit more present now, as I'm kind of clicking in? So I'm not doing a whole bunch. I'm just trying to, bring it up in my face a little bit. Albert asked if the faster attack makes the compressor work harder. It doesn't make it work harder. It just makes it kick in quicker once this vocal crosses the threshold. So another analogy is the door analogy. How were you able to tell that you did X dB of compression and then adjusted the gain? So first I'll answer Albert's question. So the way that attack works is, imagine the threshold of a door. So as you go through the door, something happens. So let's say when you cross a threshold, I punch you in the face, right? I know it's not the nicest thing, but let's just pretend. So if I have my attack really fast, the moment that you come through the threshold, you're not even have your face all the way in and I'm already attacking you, right? I'm compressing you. Whereas if I have a slower attack time, you cross the threshold and I'm kind of like back here, like winding up, like woo. So it's just the time that it takes after the signal crosses the threshold before the compressor starts compressing. Okay. Now, Leanne asked, how was I able to tell that I did X dB of compression and then adjusted the gain for it accordingly? On the compressor, I have a gain reduction meter, which is right here.
Just got me an ounce like roll up.
And as it compresses, it tells you how much compression you're actually doing, and then I kind of adjust. Now, this is a peak meter, so it'll show you your peaks. So it peaked at 6, but it was kind of sitting more around the 3.5. So I just kind of like split the difference a little bit and chose 5.5. I hope that answered your question. So now that I have his vocal kind of sitting, I actually can bring it back a little bit. And then what I can do now is I can actually do some kind of sculpting EQ kind of stuff, which I'll do here using, again, some Avid stuff. It's very, very, where is it? Oh, boom. So I'm going to use the 7-band.
Just got me an ounce like roll up.
And I'm actually going to just kind of boost some stuff that people typically boost. I'm going to give it some super highs.
Just got me an ounce like roll up.
And I'm also going to kind of cut a little bit of this, just a little bit here.
Just got me an ounce like roll up.
Now, if you want your vocal to stick out, a good place to go, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut that. A good place to go is somewhere around here.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
Okay, so I'll play it again with it and then without it.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir.
Okay, so again, not doing a lot, just a little bit of shaping. You can go nuts with some of this stuff, just depending on the track. Now that I've de-essed it, I could actually do stuff like this.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir.
So you can kind of really crank some of that high, which people like to do. And it's something that just gives the vocal kind of like the sheen up top. I'm actually going to leave that for now because I think that's actually okay. Does anybody have any questions so far? Am I talking too much? Do you need to see anything else? Okay, cool. So now I want to talk about these backgrounds.
Just got me an ounce like roll up.
So automatically already you starting to hear, like, you hear the difference. You hear these sound a little bit darker. They're not as bright. Let me see what Albert was doing to them. He kind of was doing a similar thing, and he had a compressor on here.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir.
So this actually, it's a little bit not as bright, but I'm okay with that. And I'm actually I would actually bring this back a bit because I don't want it to compete with the lead vocal. I want it to kind of be a background. This is not Gladys Knight. This is the Pips now. These are the background singers. They're not the main feature here. So we got to keep them in the background. So one of the things that I like to do to create space, which is something that you guys should kind of think about, is like just panning stuff hard left and right. A lot of times we put stuff in the middle frequency wise, and then we put it in the middle pan wise. That is really it's a small bit of real estate, and you have a lot of people fighting for it. So you're gonna want to like make space for those things.
Just got me an ounce like.
So by simply panning things out or further out, they automatically will jump out because now they're in their own space because nothing else is there, right? They stick out like sore thumbs. So you don't have to have things as loud anymore because they're far out to the sides.
Just got me an ounce like roll up.
Okay, and then Albert also has effects, and he's done different effects for different sections, okay, which is cool. I'm gonna put this back in with the lead vocal, and let's hear how they sound together.
Just got me an ounce like roll up. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe, oh no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
Okay, that sounds pretty smooth. I'd actually bring back those backgrounds a bit more. One thing that you guys can do for your vocals, which makes the vocal sometimes stick out, and actually take a little bit of space, is things like chorus. Chorus is a great effect for giving that vocal some extra texture. I'll show you guys a really quick kind of setup for some chorus. So I'll call this chorus. And I spelled it wrong, but that's fine. Kajorus. And we'll send this out the same. Right? And I'm gonna add an Avid pitch plugin, which lets you emulate some style of chorus. Okay, so if you only have a pitch plugin, and I know every DAW has a pitch plugin, and you want to make kind of a chorus, I'll give you guys some quick settings that you can use. So one of my favorites I like to use is I do two sides. One is down 9 cents. This is linked. Oh, here it goes. And the other one is up 9 cents. So if those of you who know music theory, you know that a semitone is a lot. It's like one note. From C to C sharp is a semitone. But we're moving 1/100th of a semitone. So all I'm moving is 9 cents up and down, which is a very, very small amount of pitch difference. But because I'm doing an up and a down, it's enough to make the vocal feel, or make the sound that's going through the chorus separate from the actual vocal. And I will turn up my feedback a bit. And then the other thing that makes it stick out from the vocal is making it slightly delayed from the vocal. So we'll do under 25 milliseconds, which gives us what we like to call the Haas effect. So I'm going to mute these and I'm going to put the chorus on the lead and show you guys what the chorus does.
Just got me an ounce like roller.
Why am I not sending?
Just got me an ounce like roller.
Oh, that was the wrong track.
Just got me an ounce like roller.
Sorry.
Just got me an ounce like roller. Some of that boy green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir.
So because of the delay that I have on there, it kind of gives it, I'm actually going to lower this one a little bit. It kind of gives it kind of almost like a little bit of a slap, and it sounds like a little bit of a kind of reverbish, but that texture actually makes your vocal feel more of the track, and it typically draws people's attention toward it. And because it's slightly different in pitch, it kind of is shifting back and forth with the vocal as it sings, so it gives it that chorus effect.
Just got me an ounce like roller.
Okay, obviously I wouldn't do it like this unless I was mixing Tupac, but
just got me an ounce like roller. Some of that boy green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
okay, so I'm gonna play it and kind of mute and unmute the chorus for you guys, the chorus effect.
Just got me an ounce like roller. Some of that boy green, yeah, show enough.
Back in.
I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir.
Do you guys hear that? Do you guys hear it kind of like starts to gel a little bit together, but also kind of has a little bit of this kind of sheen, kind of clean stuff on there, which is something that I like to do because it makes the vocal stick out and makes the vocal important. It makes the people know like this is what you're supposed to be paying attention to. Yes, this is an awesome track, but listen to what this guy's saying because this is really important. Let me kind of unmute his effects that he has here.
Just got me an ounce like roller. Some of that boy green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my
Okay, so he has a reverb, which is just a large hall that he's using, and he's also using a delay. So one of the things that I suggest to you guys when you're using delay, and this is something that I like to do, when you're using delay is that, oh, why is this not, sorry. When you're using delay, sorry, there it goes. When you're using delay or any effect, when you're doing a send to the effect, like you create a send and now you're sending that vocal to that effect, is that you turn your mix 100%. Because you don't need any of the original sound coming back from the send. You only need the affected sound coming back. So then you don't have to actually turn your delays up as loud, which I'm assuming now they're probably really loud. So I'm going to bypass this. And let's hear what this is doing.
just got me an ounce like roller.
You see, it's like it's cranked. You don't have to do that.
Just got me an ounce like roller.
Kaleem asked, do you create this separate chorus channel and mix it in mainly for greater flexibility as opposed to have the chorus on the main vocal and then using dry wet? Yes, and another reason is if I create an aux with the chorus effect, I can use it on multiple tracks. So instead of putting the same plugin on every track and using up a lot of processing power, I can instead do one aux with the chorus effect and then send all the vocals to it, and that allows me to use it on multiple vocal channels or instrument channels, whatever I decide to use it on, and I'm not using as much processing power. I come from a time, you know, I've been using Pro Tools since version 4 the computers weren't very powerful, and you couldn't go ham and put the same effect on every channel like you can now. So this is just how I work, and it's also, I come from mixing on consoles, and when you used to mix on a console, you only had maybe 4 or 5 effects in the studio that you could actually use, so you use aux sends. Does that answer your question, Khalil? But if you want, you can put them on, individual channel and use wet dry. That's up to you. I just do it this way because it allows me to use the same effect for multiple tracks without having to recreate the effect over and over. So I hope that answers your question. Cool. Okay, so we were talking about the delay. So one of the things I like to do with delay, and I'll show you here on this delay, is I actually like to filter the delay. Okay, I like to cut some of the highs from the delay. So I'll play this.
Just got me an ounce like roller. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them get my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
So the high cut is the high frequencies of the delay that's coming through the delay. I like to cut them. So I've cut this down to 1.6 kilohertz, which is pretty low. It's kind of like in that radio tone. And what that does is it limits the frequency band of the delay. So what's coming back, it's not the same frequency spectrum as the reverb, as the main vocal, which pushes the delay back in the mix. So when you hear people talk about depth in your mix, is it creating that space from front to back? Okay, so by cutting some of the highs and cutting some of the lows, I make it smaller and it pushes it way further back in the mix.
Just got me an ounce like roller. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir.
So now the delay becomes more subtle. It's not this in your face, like it's not, the breakdown delay where everything drops and you want this big effect. This is a more subtle effect that you can have in the back of your vocal mix without it taking everything over.
Just got me an ounce like roller. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
Okay, so then one other thing that I like to do, and then you want to see the frequency. Well, on this one, I cut it down to 1.6, which is this thing right here. So I cut that, and then I cut the lows out. I can actually cut a little bit more. So the other thing that I like to do is on reverbs, I actually tend to do the opposite, which is instead of cutting the highs, I'll actually cut a lot of the lows. Why? Because when you send a lot of stuff to a reverb kind of hangs around, for a specific amount of time. If you send a lot of low frequency information to the reverb, you have this kind of pool of low end. Okay, so what I will typically do is I will put a high pass filter before the reverb. So I'll go like this. Let's go to my Avid. Boom. And do that. And I'll kind of cut it. Maybe it's about there.
Just got me an ounce like roller.
And then after the reverb, I will boost some highs. And this gives a sheen to the vocal without having to crazily crank the high end on the vocal. You can get some of that brightness back on a vocal without having to crank it on the vocal and get crazy S's. And then I will follow that sometimes with some sort of stereo widener. I don't know if there's one here from Avid, but if you guys have one, I would use it. I don't know if this one has one, but I'll show you one that everybody uses, which is the Waves S1.
Just got me an ounce like roller. Some of that Leroy Green, yeah, show enough. I won't let them kill my vibe on no sir. Just let me do my thing, let me do my thing, damn it. Let me do my thing, motherfucking thing right now.
All right, so all those little things that I just did are things that will make your vocal nice and bright. It'll take up a lot of space, give it some width, and then also allow you to then have space for other things to go. Albert asked, does the feedback on the delay matter? Feedback, all it is how many times the delay repeats after the initial hit. Okay. If we can, I want to open it up for some questions, just because, the rest of the stuff here is vocals, so it would kind of be a lot more of the same. So I want to open it up with some vocals. Maybe I'll stop the transmission from here, Loic, and just have the audio from whatchamacallit for now.
Sounds good.
From Zoom.
Yeah, so I unmute everybody. So if you want to speak, just unmute yourself. Let's open up to questions.
Don't be shy, guys. I'm your friend.
This is we're just the 10 of us. Is between us.
So Frank.
Yep.
You see on the bottom when I had linked all the vocals to like one kind of like master track. It says all
here?
Vocals.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is like this layout cool? Like is that
no, that's
too much.
That's totally, I mean, first of all, whatever works for you is what works for you. So if that works for you, that's great. I do the same thing, and when I mix like a multi-track, and those of you guys who maybe have seen some of my other stuff, seminars with Music Expo, I break it down. So I'll do like instruments to one, the drums to another, keyboards to one, and then all the vocals always end up. So I always end up with like 4 auxes of all the music, and then I can just kind of mix from there. This also gives you an opportunity to kind of just put like a final touch up, whatever effect on all the vocals. Or in addition to that, it lets you do cool, like, do the Drake thing in the second verse where you filter all the high end, the 40 underwater vibe. If you have an aux where all your music is going, it's easy to do that instead of trying to do it on every track individually. So this is perfectly normal. Everybody does it, and it works just fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what you're doing.
Okay, so what would I put on the on that all vocal aux?
Typically I kind of save that till the end, and it'll just be something to just sweeten everything, make it all fit together better. Sometimes it's a compressor, sometimes it's some EQ. But it could be whatever makes the vocal be where it needs to be. Once all the tracks are in and all the vocals are in, you can kind of figure that out. Like, okay, or if you listen to it, be like, man, I wish the vocals were brighter. Instead of EQing every vocal, you could just come to the all vocal aux. And sometimes that's actually a little bit better than trying to like EQ everything individually. Cool?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else?
I have a question about vocals.
Yeah.
So there's like a plugin called Waves Vocal Writer, and there's like a manual way to like ride vocals as well. I'm just curious if is that part of your process? Do you have any recommendation?
I don't use Vocal Writer. I actually do it the old-fashioned way, and I will automate the vocal. And I do it. I actually have a little controller here. I have the Euphonics controller, and at home I have one of those the PreSonus one, the one that's like one fader. And so when I'm mixing at home, I'll use that to ride the fader. And by what I mean by ride the fader, guys, is in all your DAWs you have the ability to automate things, and one of the things you can automate is your volume. So in Pro Tools you put it in touch, and then as the song plays, you would ride the fader up and down, listening to the track, making sure that the vocals always sticking out, and that really works for me. And I always find that it doesn't take like 10 passes. It's usually like 1 or 2 passes. And the cool thing with automation is that you can kind of punch in. So like if you think the first verse sounds great, but you want to do the second verse, you just kind of start from the second verse and kind of ride it. And for me, I find that is a better outcome than using like a vocal writer, even though that thing's great and it does some really cool stuff, especially with like ducking and like, getting things out of the way. For me, the vocal writing with the fader will just kind of puts me in that place where I feel like, it sounds great.
Is clip gain, is that kind of like clip gain then, or you could do that instead of clip gain?
Think of clip gain, because the thing with clip gain is clip gain happens before all your plugins. So think of clip gain as the preamp before you get into the console. So if you turn up clip gain, it gets louder into every plugin you have in the channel. Whereas volume writing is after everything. It's the final output before it goes to the master. So it's a little bit different. But you're both in both instances, you're trying to achieve the same goal, which is to make sure that vocal feels like it's at the same volume all the time. But with vocal writing or just using the fader, there are some times where you want the vocal to kind of stick out, or you want like a guitar solo to poke out, and that's when volume automation becomes important, because if not, your mix is just kind of stagnant. But if you have things coming in and out moving, it keeps the listener engaged because things just got louder. That's why people do drops. When you drop a bunch of instruments and it kind of gets quiet, it makes you focus on the track again, because your brain is now hearing something different and it needs to refocus. So volume writing, bringing things up and down when you feel they're important. Somebody's doing a run, a guitar player is doing a lick, a horn player is doing a lick. Bringing those little things up and down in your mix keeps people's attention. Cool.
So I have one
yeah
question about like the vocals. So from what I've seen you've done a lot of like subtle changes here and there, right? So from your perspective, how do you know the vocal is done, like when it comes to the mixing sense of it?
That is a fantastic question. And that's probably the thing that takes the longest. It's really, and I hate to sound like a hippie, but it's really like, it just feels right. You're listening to the track, you probably have a reference in your head of what you want it to sound like. And in the beginning, when I was mixing, when I was learning to mix, and I mean, when I started learning to mix, because I'm still learning, I'm always learning new things, I would use a reference to kind of guide me, right? Because I know that vocal felt right, or this mix felt right to me. And that's going to change, but find a reference that you really like and try to go for that vocal sound. And when you get close to it, you'll kind of start to feel like, okay, this is where it feels good. But it really is, it is a feeling. Like at that point, like technical schmechnical, it all goes out the window, and it's like, does this feel right? Sometimes a distorted vocal feels right. Sometimes a radio sounding vocal feels right in the context of that track. So I know this is not really an answer, but it's really like, it feels like it's important, and it feels like it's driving the song in the correct direction. Does that help? I hope it helps. I'm sorry.
That helps, thanks.
That was like mad hippie vague, like spiritual. And I hate being that guy sometimes, but it's really like, as an engineer, everything I do is like super technical, but then there's parts of this where it's like, it's not technical at all. It's like, it's a feeling. Does it make you bob your head? Do you feel the intent of the song in this section? And that's really like, that's when it's like, that's your job. It's not knowing how to work a compressor. It's like making sure that this song is delivering on its intent. Anyways, enough Deepak Chopra. Anything else?
No, but this is good. Yeah.
I got a question. So when I automate, because I do automate, like when I was mixing my boy stuff, like I did a lot of automation for like the panning and like when to cut off delays and stuff. But every time I did, and when I worked at the kitchen mixing with them for dubbing, like I had this problem. When I do automation and everything looks legit, when I go back to the session, everything's like shifted either to the right or to the left just a little bit, and it's everything. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong in my animation, because I draw it out. I don't even I don't do touch. Like I actually like draw it out.
What do you mean everything is shifted?
Say this for my project or whatever that you got up. Say that everything where it is now. Let's say that I wanted to do like I drew in some automation for the hook. Like I'll save it or whatever, it close out. When I come back the next day, it'll be off. It'll be off to the left a little bit or off to the right, and then I'll center it. And then, but then when I go back into it, then it'll do the same thing. So is that like a processing thing? The computer's messing up, or
that could be, Albert. That could be simply a delay thing. So that could be a situation where you're accidentally turning on and off your delay compensation. when your delay compensation is on or off, it either compensates for the delay of every plugin or it doesn't. So if you had it on and everything sounds right, and then you turn it off, everything's gonna feel late. So it could just be that.
Is there a shortcut for that though? Because I don't do it manually.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's one for, there's nothing next to it. Like you actually have to come in here. But remember that if somebody else uses that Pro Tools rig, especially at the kitchen, they might turn it off because maybe they were recording and it was throwing off the vocal. So then when you come back in, it doesn't save it with the session. It's a system setting. So it
Yeah.
Wow. By the way, guys, when Albert's talking about the kitchen is a post-production house here in Miami that they do a lot of like stuff for Netflix and stuff like that. So if you're listening to a show and the audio is off, it's Albert's fault. By the way.
Maybe like a little bit.
Anybody else? Do we have any other questions? Anything you guys want me to touch back on or go back or go over?
Would you have used auto-tune on this track if I was putting it out?
I think on some sections, yeah. Just slight though, not like auto-tune T-Pain, but like get stuff back into just a little pitch correction. I think Leanne was thinking about a real kitchen. I'm glad I cleared that up.
Oh yeah, I just got into the vibe.
Do we have any other questions? Some of the other guys out there, you guys curious about anything? Anything you want me to touch on? Good.
So we're good.
I think I want to take. Can we take 5 minutes?
I think we should. Everything is cool. Please drop a 1 if you're called to take a bio break or just a refresher, and we regroup in a couple of minutes. And +1. Okay, let's do that.
Okay, one last thing. Kaleem asked if I use Autotune Live or the EFX version. It just depends on the session. So usually, like my urban hip hop stuff with like the aggressive Autotune, I'll use the EFX version. If it's something that is just pitch correction, I try to use the other version, which is less harsh. So on that note, let me mute my mic and we'll take a little break and then come back 5 minutes.
So Frank, just before we leave, what's next?
Next, I'm going to pull up KOSHL's track. I hope I said your name right. And we're going to pull that up. His is actually a 2-track. He already mixed it. And it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on in the track, which is really cool. So I'm excited to talk about that.
Great. Lovely.
Awesome.
See you in a minute.
All right, guys.
All right. I think what we do, Frank, we ask for once when everybody's ready to go. You unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm actually going to, because I think it's a different link now because it's a different session. Oh, sorry. So do you want to post it? Or I can post it.
I post it. There's a new link. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because it's a different session, so it asks for a link.
Interesting enough, do you have 2 channels? 2 mono channels?
No, it should be stereo.
Okay. Can we do a quick test?
Yeah. You know what? It's transmitting in mono for some strange reason.
You see, I think the previous one I had channel 1, 2, and here I have channel 1 and 2. I have 2.
Okay, let me stop it, and let me reinstantiate the plugin. So I'll probably go mute for a second.
Okay. While we do this, how is everybody? Checking on everybody here. Everybody's doing good?
Okay, I'm gonna paste a new link.
Doing great. Awesome. All right. Yeah, now I have it's a 0 channel.
Let me do a check. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. I mean, to me, it works. Drop ones for audio movers. If it works for you, now drop a 1. Great.
Cool. Is everybody back?
Yeah. Kali, Mayo, Brian, Ian.
That's the new link for the enhanced audio.
Yeah. Are you guys enjoying the enhanced audio? Is it working for you guys?
Yeah, man. When you showed me the beat where you did the lows and the highs, you could really tell that the beat got expanded.
Cool.
Oh, that's a picture of Hannah. I thought she was just standing there like, I was like, what?
I'm here.
I'm actually not as courageous as all of you. I'm hiding the back. I'm in a spare bedroom, and it's a messy bed with a sleeping cat. I'll unveil because otherwise it feels fake. So I'll just unveil what's happening here.
Oh no!
Actually, I'm showing it because there's one reason. It's today her birthday.
Happy birthday, kitty.
Oh, birthday cat.
She turned 8.
Oh wow.
Papa?
Long, healthy life.
Yeah, she says hello.
Oh, hey.
That's it. And we go back to the nice background. Oh, a Music Expo San Francisco. Maybe some of you may have been to this one last year. This was a mastering class.
Oh, I need that.
So they've got this.
Was that wasn't last year?
That's last year. This one is last year.
Where's the one with Piper? Was that the same year?
Piper did also a session in this room.
That's the one I went to.
Last year. The year before. All right. So go back here. And yeah, if everybody's back on, maybe we.
Cool. Everybody got their links?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right in.
I'm having an echo.
Yeah, somebody has to probably either mute their mic or mute their Zoom. Cool. Does everybody see my screen? Open up my chat window, make sure I see you guys. Boom. Okay, cool. Here's my chat window. Okay, just put that there. Sorry guys, I'm just getting a little bit organized. Put you guys up at the top. All right. So I'm going to play KOSHL's track from the beginning, just so you guys can hear it. This is a stereo file, obviously. I asked him yesterday. He sent me the track, or the day before, or actually like 2 days ago. Sent me an MP3 yesterday. I asked if he could send me a 24-bit because I feel like it would probably be better. Just because you can hear and see more of the audio stuff when you send the WAV file. So here it is from the beginning. Oh, sorry.
Skies
guys, awesome job, man. I really like this track. It gives me a little bit of Depeche Mode kind of vibes. So is this you singing, or is this a vocalist you work with? This is, by the way, this is KOSHL's track, guys. Nope.
KOSHL, take the mic, man. This is your occasion.
Yeah, it's me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I dig it. Do you want to tell us kind of like what the idea was behind this, like what you kind of were going for? And
Yeah, so I that the main kind of lead sound was from Omnisphere. I just had this melody, and it's kind of like detuned and kind of gave me this kind of dystopian, post-apocalyptic vibe. So I just kind of wrote the lyrics based on that, and you know, it's a little more electronic elements than I usually have. There's a lot of dance. It's like kind of dense with a lot of percussion elements and a lot of things coming in and out. So kind of the challenge to mix.
Yeah.
I can turn on my mic.
It was a vibe though, man, for sure.
It's great. And I hear a lot of those things coming in and out, which is super important for you guys. Just like I was talking earlier about automation, for you guys who are producing and making your own music, you know, it's great. You know, I know a lot of us start with like a loop, and it's just like, you know, just 4 bars, and we love it and we love the sound of it. But we need to progress from that loop, and you need to build the track, and you need to break it down, and you need to build it back up. For the simple fact that as humans, like the way our brain works, if we keep hearing the same thing over and over, eventually our brain tunes it out. So it's just like, you know, when you go to the beach, if you've ever slept near the beach, the first 2 days you hear the ocean all day. And then after the 3rd day, you stop hearing the ocean because your brain just tunes it out. It's like, oh, it's that same sound over and over and over and over again. And your brain just kind of shuts it out. So when we have a 4-bar loop or an 8-bar loop, yeah, it's interesting. Maybe the first 2 times it goes around, and then your brain goes, I need something else. I need something more interesting. So it's great that you're bringing in different elements at different times and having them kind of like stick out, and they actually have a good amount of volume to them, because it draws the listener's attention. When producers talk about ear candy, it's just those little things that come in and out during the production that keeps people's attention. So let's I'm gonna play this again right from the beginning. I'm not gonna play it all the way through, but just kind of talk about the beginning section. Okay, so you have this really cool synth bass, which sonically is amazing, and it takes up a large amount of space in your mix. It's kind of, you know, it's the main feature here. When the kick comes in, I'll zoom in here. The first kick, we feel it. Boom. It's got a nice attack. We hear it. But what happens is over time is we start to lose it a little bit. We start to lose its presence. And this is a common thing when we're mixing a lot of instruments that are living in a similar frequency range. So in this situation, which is very similar to when I'm doing hip hop or R&B, there's a lot of low end, sometimes there's a big heavy 808, and then they want to put a kick on top of it, is you need to make a decision. You need to figure out who's going to occupy what space. Is the bass instrument going to be holding down all the low end, and the kick is just going to be like this poignant, like letting you know where the 1 and the 3 is? Or is it going to be the other way around? Okay. If it's the kick that's going to be holding down all the low end, then I tend to push the low mids, like the 200s on the bass up, right? So kind of like the growly bass area. Not that I'm cutting off a bunch of the low end, but I'm pushing frequency-wise more of that so that I can scoop a little bit of the bottom off and let the kick really hold down like this big fat lower frequency, right? If I'm going to let the bass hold it down, then I might either sidechain, right? do a side chain on the bass, so when the kick hits, I make like a little dip at around anywhere from 90 to 110 somewhere. That's usually where the kick peaks, and I'll make a little dip there with any type of dynamic processing, so that I can have a loud bass, but every time the kick comes in, it just makes a little bit of space. Do you use sidechain, KOSHL?
Yeah, I do. I definitely sidechain with the kick and the bass. This track also had this like low tom instrument as well.
Yeah, I heard it's like do 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 do.
So I wasn't sure, should I treat the tom like the kick as well? So I was like really confused on the low end. So this is all helpful.
Yeah. So one of the things that that like when I was talking about like making your record taller is by like accentuating the vastness of the frequency range, you can actually make more space for stuff. So by let's say for in this case that you were gonna take the bass and that was gonna hold down like the super duper low end, like the sub stuff, right? So you could have it down there, and then you could create that side chain for the kick, so that the kick can be a little bit louder and be a little bit like more poignant. So when it comes in, it's like, yeah, that's the kick, and the bass is holding down this sub. That means that you have that entire area of the 200 that I was talking about earlier for those tom sounds. In our brains, when we hear it, it's all going to sound like low end. But if we focus it in certain sections and we give those instruments their personal space, they're going to seem louder. So super subs on the bass, you know, obviously with some of the higher harmonic part, but not as loud. Side chain so that the kick, when it comes in, it sticks out. It's like boom, 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 right? And then those lower toms, not as much low end as the kick, but more in that 200 to 300 range, which is really like where toms, actual drum toms kind of live, like low toms kind of live in that like 200 range, which, you know, when you have too much of it in a track can sound boomy. But if it's not always coming in and it's just kind of like this little like accent, it just gives the song like a section where there's like this powerful, you know. So when those tom comes in, it's like, oh, we're going to war, like it's serious. And then when they come back, now there's this space like that you can kind of like play with the audience kind of back and forth. Okay. One of the things that's important is like think about like where would this music be played? You know, I listen to this song and I'm thinking like a huge festival type crowd, really big speakers where you could really, really push some serious low ends and melt people's eyeballs. Everybody likes melted eyeballs, right? So you can have that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I did is I put this Insight plugin. Can everybody see it? Okay, so I put this Insight plugin on here. Let me move this. And I kind of want to show you guys some stuff. Okay, so if you notice, like down here, there's a lot of energy, right? In this low end, which is your bass. If you take some of these instruments that aren't particularly necessary to be down there and roll them off, you would actually feel the bass feel louder. And even in general, if you rolled off like from, let's say on everything, like on your entire mix here, I'll show you guys. If I take an EQ, let's say I'm taking my Fab filter because I think it does it really well. If I go and I place a low cut and I do kind of a steep filter, and I'm gonna set this to 20 hertz. All right, now I'm gonna bypass this. Did you feel that the bass felt like it got louder just now when I put it in? Listen to it again. I'm gonna bypass it.
Yeah.
Do you hear it kind of jumps out as soon as I put the plugin in? That's because all of your speakers in your house and all of your headphones cannot produce 20 hertz. Your speakers, they can't do it. You need an enormous subwoofer to produce 20 hertz. So by having a lot of energy down at 20 hertz and below 20 hertz can be detrimental to some of your mixes, because if the speaker can't play it back, we're going back to my analogy with the ice in the cups. 20 hertz are huge ice cubes. They're massive and they take up tons of space. So when you have that energy down there and there's a lot of it, like you have, because you can see here, when I go back, take this off. See this? That's a lot of residual energy that you have down there at the bottom of your mix. And most of the time, if you get your stuff mastered, most of the mastering engineers, they're going to roll off some of that low end. And that's why a lot of times you'll send something to mastering, those of you who send stuff to mastering, and you'll get it back and you'll be like, oh my God, it's so much louder. It's not because they added stuff. It's usually because they take stuff away. And now this gives you so much more space to work with. I'll show you guys something else here. I'm going to bypass this. By cutting off that little bit of 20 hertz, I'm gaining back some voltage that I can use to boost something else. It's also going to take the stereo bus is no longer, or your speakers are no longer trying to produce that, so things are going to stick out, which gives you now more space to work with. Okay, so when you guys are mixing and you have a lot of low end, I suggest that listen to everything. If something has things, put on a frequency spectrum. There's a spectrum analyzer. If you see stuff that's like at like rumbling like 20 hertz or 10 hertz, like really hard, like cut that off, because most people don't have speakers that can reproduce 10 or 20 hertz, and you're just going to lose that energy. It's energy that's just being wasted. Okay. Also, when you bounce down to a different format, that frequency has to be accounted for, which also takes away from some of your dynamic range, because now that's eating up some of the volume that you would use in your conversion. So if you bounce it down to MP3, you're going to lose a lot of that, and it's also taking up data that's not necessary. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So it's all about like making space and making sure that you're submitting or turning in the right part of your audio so that it can be heard. Okay. Let's keep listening.
Hold on, I got a question.
Go ahead.
Just real quick. So that the EQ, the roll off you did, that's more safe for the mastering, or you put it on like the master track when you're mixing?
You could do it either, or you could do it to the specific instrument that may have those low frequencies.
Uh-huh.
Or you could do it to, your one of your auxes, your master. Just be aware that that can occur among different instruments. So if you're going to do it individually, just listen to your tracks. I know a lot of us, we work in the computer, we're doing production in the computer, especially like things like you're mentioning Omnisphere, like some of those like big pads from like some synth stuff, they have a lot of low end, and that's why they feel so powerful. But sometimes that low end can extend really far. And if you have other low frequency elements in that mix, you're going to want to like carve out some space for that. You're going to want to get some of that energy back so that you can use it somewhere else. Okay.
Frank, do you mind repeating the question? Because some of the listeners have only listened to one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Albert asked.
No worries.
Albert asked if I would put that filter on all of the on the master, or should I do it like on my mix bus or on my individual instruments? And I was just explaining that you can do it on the mix bus, but sometimes it helps to just put it on the individual instruments that actually have that type of low end. Was it clear for everyone?
Thank you.
Awesome.
Means it.
Okay.
Thanks.
So let's keep listening. My Zoom isn't my chat. Oh, there it is. Oh no, my chat isn't. Oh no, there it is. Now it's moving. Okay. All right, let's play it from here. Let's pick it up from here. So, KOSHL, on your master, did you have some type of limiter? What do you
Yeah, I use Ozone Maximizer, so I had that at the end
Okay.
just to get the volumes up.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So the reason that I asked is this is something that you guys need to keep in mind. When you use something like a Ozone Maximizer or a L2 or any of those like plugins that just kind of squash things and make things louder, one of the things that you need to be aware of is that when you take your audio and it's like this, right? It's super dynamic, the kicks are loud, the bass is low, and there's some high frequency, and you go like this, you not only make everything kind of similar in volume, you create harmonics from that, or the harmonics of that are brought up. Now, harmonics, when there's a lot of harmonic content in your mix, it's kind of what makes your mix feel louder. It's one of the things that we spoke about on Thursday during the analog mixing style. Is that harmonic content makes your mix sound full. But when you use those limiters and you kind of start to push it, you're actually going to be bringing up a lot of those harmonics. And sometimes those harmonics can be in the higher frequencies and they can make your track a little bit hard to listen to. But the reason I ask is because when the vocal comes in, it feels like things get a little bit lower. So there's almost like kind of like a quick little duck that happens right when the vocal comes in, and every time you sing something, the track like it gets a little bit darker, and that's also a byproduct of those types of plugins. I'm not saying I use Ozone. I love Ozone. I think it's amazing, but you have to be careful because if you're pushing your vocal loud on your mix, and then it's the first thing that hits that limiter or that maximizer, when you sing, it's gonna go first. So it's going to kind of like, it's going to compress it real quick because it wants everything to balance out. So you have to be very careful with that. And then what that could mean is maybe you need to bring the track back so that the vocal seems louder, or maybe you need to carve out a space in the track so the vocal feels louder and in your face so that you don't have to squash it as much. Zap asks, would I roll off on the kick or the bass? Honestly, I always try to find out which one is going to hold down the low end first. And then I roll it off on the one that doesn't need it. So if it's the kick that's going to be the main low end, I roll it off on the bass, and then vice versa. So Leon was saying, oh my God, I was trying to figure out what's happening when I put a limiter on my track. The vocal became louder compared to the other things when I put the limiter on. Yeah, so whatever typically is like the loudest thing in your track, because we usually try to push our vocal up, obviously, it's going to grab that and it's going to squish that. The other thing that happens is a lot of times in a lot of these limiters, the way that they're designed, the middle, like that 1K where the vocal is and all those like frequencies are, that stuff tends to get pushed up in your face, which is why using that stuff like L2 and even the isotope stuff is so addicting, because you're like crushing and you're like, oh my God, it sounds so much louder. I love it. The thing that happens though is that when you're bringing up all of that content, that harmonic content right in the middle, imagine listening to like a distorted guitar, like a mid-range distorted guitar for a really long time. Eventually you get like a dead spot in your ear and it becomes annoying, and it's like you can't listen to it. Have you ever like put on a song and you like, I like the song but it's hard to listen to, like it's aggressive? Sometimes that's from over compression or over limiting or over maximizing. It just brings up that like nastiness of the vocal or of anything in the music, and it makes it really difficult to listen to. So does that make sense so far, guys? Am I talking too much? Am I explaining myself? Does it make sense? Okay, cool. So that's why I'm always preaching like a tall mix, It's not like stretch your audio out. It's like make space for everything so that you can have these amazing sections where everything lives and is loud and can be in your face, and yeah, it still sounds good. Okay, so one of the things I always tell people watch out is like for those maximizers. You can have a loud track without crushing it. Okay, I'm gonna keep listening, and then I'm gonna talk about something else that allows you to have like really loud mixes without necessarily like destroying all your dynamics.
The virtual reality was wrong.
So right here, in this section, there's something that happens when you say something with an S. The S is, it's really loud, and it's going to the delay. So it's okay. So what's happening is you have a little bit of sibilance, and it's being amplified by the fact that there's a delay, right? So this is one of the reasons why in the earlier track when I was talking about, I like to roll off the high frequency of the delay, because if you roll off the frequency of the delay, that's, unless it was intentional, you're not hearing the repeat of this S, and it doesn't seem as loud. The other thing I would try to get is perhaps putting a de-esser there, you know, on that track. But be very careful not to destroy the S's, but just like I was saying, like try 2 de-essers. Like I'm a big fan, like a little bit on each one goes a long way. You don't have to crush it, but be careful. This is also a byproduct of sometimes we compress too much. You know, we throw some plugins. I know a lot of us, you know some producers, know some engineers. Hey, can I have a template? They send you a vocal template. It's got a bunch of stuff on it, and it ends up, the vocal ends up being really compressed, really bright, really high and mid-rangey, and those S's are just piercing. You have to be very careful. Yes, having a nice bright vocal makes it sound expensive and professional, but too much high end, now it starts to sound brittle. So you have to be very careful with that stuff. Okay. Also, is your delay panned, KOSHL, on that?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do generally use a lot of ping pong, so it might be like kind of out on the sides.
Okay, that's good. No, I was gonna say if it is, it's great, because that actually takes away from some of the energy of being right in the middle. Okay, you want to kind of make space for things. Okay, let me kind of pull this back up, and then we'll do. So this screen, what I'm showing now, Albert just has. This is an isotope. It's just an analyzer for different things, and I wanted to show you guys this. So you can kind of see here frequency-wise where everything is kind of living. You see that our kicks are kind of here, which is typically where kicks are, and our low end. And then as he sings, it gets a little bit wider, obviously, because he's got reverb and delays. And then when those keyboards come in, the bzz, bzz, you see it gets really wide because those keyboards are really wide. Watch. See when that keeps that one stab keyboard comes in, it gets kind of wide. You see like the spectrum kind of spreading out. There's a reason why that keyboard sounds like louder and in your face, is because it has all that space by itself. There's not a lot of stuff living out in those outer edges of the left and right of your mix. So this keyboard is out there all by its lonesome. It's like, I'm open, throw me the ball. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just out there by itself, which is cool, because it's a great effect, because when it comes in, it's like, boom, a new thing, listen to this. But just be aware that there's other things that when that keyboard is not playing could have probably been living out there, right? There's other keyboards, there's other like just little sounds, and it doesn't have to live out there permanently. You just said something about ping pong delays. There's nothing wrong with having a sound that just moves around back and forth, like with an auto panner, okay, where you just simply, you know, put a little panning action on it. You could automate it. There are plugins that do it, but you're moving stuff out of the way. Those toms that you were talking about, the ones that come in from time to time, you could have those, you know, moving around a little bit. That would make a lot of space for them. Does this make sense, KOSHL? Like, am I
Yeah, this is super helpful. Yeah, this is awesome.
Awesome. And guys, this doesn't just mean just for this type of track. Like if you're doing like a piano track with a vocal, like try to spread that piano out, leave the vocal in the middle, or vice versa. You know, put things in different sections of the mix. Not everything has to be in the middle, right? We have 2 ears. We can listen to stuff in stereo. And if you have 5.1, then that's a whole nother thing. But there is space for the tracks to be around your mix, giving you that ability to have things coming in and out, things be louder because they're in their own space. There's nothing around there. And you have like, I mean, right here, this V that's marked, that's like your main stereo field. Anything outside of here is a little bit out of phase. Obviously, if you're kind of all the way out here, you're way out of phase. Which when stuff is out of phase, it affects playback in mono. So like dance music, for instance, it's not good to have a lot of out of phase stuff because most clubs are not in stereo. They're typically in mono because they have tons of speakers and it wouldn't make sense for it to be in stereo. So you have to, you know, make sure that you're not out of phase on certain things. But when you're mixing in stereo, like just music that's supposed to be listened on headphones, playback on the radio or streaming, whatever, you kind of want some of this space. Okay, some of the bigger mixers, when you hear them do their mix tutorials, they talk a lot about space. And having that space, using all of your stereo image, your stereo field, gives you, there's a lot of real estate there that we're not always using. You know, we focus on the things that we like, the vocals loud, the bass is loud, but there's like all this extra space that you can use and you should be using, okay? I don't want people sending me mixes next week where everything is completely stereo. Everything is a balance, so you gotta like, you know, pick and choose what goes where. Okay. One of the things I like to when I would teach audio, I would tell people, like, if you're mixing a band, think about how the band would be on stage. You know, the drummer's in the middle, the vocalist is usually standing in front of the drummer, but then the guitar is kind of over here, and maybe the keyboard's on the other side, and maybe the horns are over here in the back, and maybe there's a cello player and he's over here. Like, think about it like that. Set the stage for your mix so that it can actually take up a lot of space and actually be a full mix. Okay, let's kind of play a little bit down here.
The blue sky.
Telling me I'm quite quiet compared to the tracks. Let me just turn up a little bit. Is that better, Leanne? Awesome. Sorry about that if I was too low, guys. So this is one of the things I wanted to show you guys. In terms of getting mixes that are louder without necessarily being over compressed, one of the things you guys can do is you can do a parallel compression. Does anybody know what parallel compression is? Okay, so we got some yeses. Okay, so parallel compression is obviously when things are in parallel, they're running, you know, right along each other together in parallel like this. So what you can do is you can have one version of your track that's compressed, and then along with that, you're playing the non-compressed version, and you're mixing the volumes of there together to equal, you know, this greater good. Okay. What happens when you compress something? You're going to bring out those internal sounds that aren't as loud. Okay. You're going to bring up some of that harmonic content, which makes us, again, feel loud, but you lose the dynamics of the track, meaning the loud parts versus the small parts. Okay. But by having the ability to mix them together, you can actually create a mix that just feels way louder. So I always try to recommend people do that before they go to a maximizer. Like, try a little parallel compression where you're mixing a little bit of the wet and the dry to get you a lot of mix. I'm going to show you guys a plugin that I actually love from Leapwing. It's called the Dyne 13. And this is a really cool multi-band compressor, so it compresses on multiple bands. There are different compressors that do this. The Wave C6 is a multi-band compressor, and you could easily use it in a parallel function where you would have a duplicate of the track, you know, where one is really compressed and one is not. In this one, it actually has a parallel mode, so you can see down here the parallel mode is on, okay, where it'll actually play some of the original and play some of the compressed version. So there's actually and I love presets, I'm a preset fan, so there's actually a preset called Wide and Powerful here, and I'm gonna play this so you guys can kind of hear what's happening. I lost something now, oh, this way. The blue sky crying the virtual reality was wrong. The whole world. Can you guys hear the difference? So this plugin, obviously, when I was playing it non-parallel, this is what it was actually doing. So that's the compressed version of the track that's happening. You hear like the bass is getting squished. It's getting a little bit more of those little attacks on some of the transients. And there's not as much boominess in the track of this version. And when I put it in parallel, it's going to add that to the original track. And now those parts that we were just hearing are going to seem louder because it's like it's doubling those. So all those little attacks, the vocals going to become a little bit louder, and the track's going to feel a little bit wider. Okay, so I'll play it again so you guys can hear it. So I'm going to bypass it first. Sail away from fire, pour the ashes burn. Don't cast desire some other way. Some other way. Can you guys hear the difference? Yes. Give me a 1 if you hear the difference. Okay, awesome. So this is a plugin. It does a great job at that. There's a lot of plugins that can do that. This is something that I recommend during your mixing. You can do this to any tracks you want. Okay, when I do my subgroups of my drums and my subgroups of my instruments and my subgroups of my vocals, if I have something that I feel like it needs some density, it just needs some extra, I will parallel it, and then I'll find the volume for it. Okay, doing this doesn't destroy all your dynamics. You still have the original dynamics that you had. It's going to bring up some of that middle content. Oh, Leapwing's going to be with us on May 16th for Music Expo, so you guys, you know, should come and listen to those guys. They know how to actually use that plugin. I'm just a fan of that couple of their presets, and it's amazing. So by doing this, you get some of that effect that you get when you maximize stuff, that it squashes everything, but you're not squashing everything. It's kind of like the best of both worlds. A lot of mastering engineers use parallel processing to get what they want out of the record without destroying the original mix. Does that make sense? So you guys can use it in your just day-to-day, whatever you're doing, trying to get more out of your mix. Use that parallel technique. It's a little bit more work, you know, sometimes it takes some interesting routing or whatever, but if you guys have questions, I'll leave my email here at the end. You guys can send me an email. You guys will also be able to like just DM me on IG, whatever. Just send me an email and be like, hey, Frank, I'm trying to do that thing that you said. This stuff is really, really useful. And it's kind of the thing that if you aren't an engineer or haven't been engineering, it's not something that people really talk about. But it is a kind of a bit of a secret thing that engineers do. It's a little trick. Okay. Let's listen to the very end here, and then we'll open up for some questions and kind of chit chat and. Awesome.
I like pink walls.
Pink face.
What's happening? So right there at the end, there's a keyboard. I mean, it happens other places in the track, but there's a really bright keyboard, kind of like little sound that happens, and that sound I found really interesting when listening to the mix because it always stuck out, right? And one of the reasons it sticks out, I'll show it to you why. If I go like this. If I play. Sail away from fire, pour the ashes burn, those past desire, somewhere. Do you guys see how it kind of lights up right here when that little sound happens? I'll play it. Let me see if I play it. Sail away from fire, pour the ashes burn, those past desire somewhere. Do you guys see it? It kind of moves right here. Just moves in this frequency range. That's the reason why that sound sticks out when it plays. It's because it's in a much higher frequency range than anything else. And it lights up this area right here, which is above 15 kilohertz, which we absolutely can hear. And it's noticeable because that sound has harmonics up there and it makes it evident. That's what, again, I repeat, make your records tall. Use the entire frequency range as much as you can to give your records that detail, that space, that ability to just be loud and in your face because you're using it all. Okay. On that note, I want to open it up to questions. We can just kind of have a convo.
Zoom thing now.
Oh, Loic, did you just announce that, Loic? There will be a way to win it on May 16th?
It's like,
yeah. I got confirmation this morning. I was chatting with the
class stroke expo things.
Hey, yo. I'm going to mute. He's apparently having a conversation with someone else about us.
Leon is asking, can I summarize your idea of a tall mix?
And then feel free to speak as well.
Yeah, you can speak.
Everybody can be on
I think she's saving her voice for her vocals that she's going to be singing.
That's actually a good idea.
So the tall mix, when I say a tall mix, is just a mix that uses as much of that frequency range as possible. So from your, our hearing is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, technically. That's and our audio equipment is meant to reproduce obviously much higher and much lower frequencies, but that's what we hear. And at the end of the day, when you bounce your mix and you put it up on iTunes or you put it up on Spotify, it's 20 to 20, okay? 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. If you use as much of that frequency range as possible, your mix will be very big. I have, actually, I'm going to, there's a couple of songs that I listen to for references, and one of them is super duper tall. And it's the Big Band Bossa Nova by Quincy Jones. Most of you will know it as the Austin Powers theme. That track Exactly. That track is extremely dynamic. I mean, it gets really loud and then it gets really soft, but it's also really, really bright, and it has a lot of low end because I think there's a surdo in there, and there's definitely a big bass in there. If those of you who don't know what a surdo is, it's a very big drum used in like Brazilian percussion. Yeah.
Boom.
Exactly. So there's a huge surdo in there, and there's a very very bright brass section which gets really loud. But there's also a very very bright triangle. And if you listen to it carefully, that triangle is in the way high frequency range. It's probably like 15, 16, 18K. And it's happening in there. So that's what I mean by a tall mix. That record, anywhere I go, it always sounds loud because it's tall and it's very dynamic. It's not squished. It has its loud moments. And there's also a wonderful example of panning in that mix. Things are all over the place. Like if you were at the orchestra listening to this group play that. If any of you get a chance, again, it's called Big Band Bossa Nova by Quincy Jones.
So
it's an older record, but it's an amazing sounding record.
I have a question for you. Can we hear all those differences on streaming services?
Depends on which streaming services.
Okay.
If you have any other ones where you can, get like the master version, like Tidal, you can hear a lot of that. Also, one of the things that I use that record for is to check. It's a reference. So if I can't hear those high highs and I can't hear those low lows wherever I'm listening to it, I know that there's something going on in that room or with those speakers. So I can kind of make adjustments going, okay, I know the bass doesn't really go that low in this room. So let me figure out how I can make an adjustment. Does that help? Leon, I'm sorry, I know I went deep. If I do plan to have my mixes mastered by someone else, what do you recommend for best practices so that mastering engineer is set up to do their best? Awesome. That is a great question. So, what I tend to recommend to people is if you're not 100% sure about what to put on your master fader, or, what kind of limiting to do, or kind of whatever, I would leave it to those people that are going to do that, right? When you deliver your mix, try to, deliver the loudest mix that you can, obviously, the best sounding mix that you can provide to that person, and let them do their job. Also be very specific about what you're hoping to get out of it. Have a conversation with your mastering engineer. Have a conversation with if you're not mixing it, whoever's mixing your music. Don't just assume that they're just going to be able to do it, so that they can do their job. It's good for us to have information. When I'm going to mix a song, I'll talk to the person beforehand and I go, okay, what are your expectations? Do you have something in your mind that you want this to sound like? Do you have a reference? Do you have a type that you're going for? That gives me a blueprint of where I need to go. And it also lets me know whether I can or cannot do that, right? If you send me a song to master or to mix, and you're like, I want it to sound like this, and your song is like not even in the same ballpark, I'm going to tell you that I don't think that that's possible. I don't think we can get there from here. I think we'll have to do other things before we get to that point. And, this will help you not be disappointed and feel like you got gypped, and two, end up with a better product.
And to follow up on this, Frank, when you say do other things to get there, it means on the production side.
Correct. On the production side, on the mix side, before you send it to mastering, like put the things where they need to be so that you have the best outcome. Again, if you're not sure, what do I need to add? Sometimes I'll get sent a song to mix and they'll say, hey, I wanted it to sound like this. And I'll go, well, I can't really turn that up to do that. You might need to add before I mix it. Okay. I might need to, you might need to add a couple of things in that mix, or you might need to, do some harmonic things to kind of get that to happen. So it's important that you communicate with whoever your team is and what you're expecting from them so that you can make sure that you get the best product at the end of the day. But that was a great question. I see Loic's dropping some stuff in the chat. A couple of coupons.
Yeah, I mean, we Anna dropped. We have. I mean, by now, I've seen some of you in a couple of sessions. You know where to find. We have actually a session schedule. They're not yet on the website, but we have actually programming until June 11. It's going to cover artist promotion, what you should be doing as an artist. what you should be as an artist, what you should be doing, sorry, as an artist during COVID-19. I know there's a lot of downtime. What the best way to take advantage of this downtime? We're going to have mastering sessions. We're going to have even copyright session. Next week, we're having a very good friend of ours, Matt Lee, who's a producer and Grammy-winning engineer, who's going to interview an artist that he recently worked with. So we have a lot of stuff, but really the big thing in May, it's going to be our 2-day Music Expo, which we're going to try to bring basically the regular Music Expo. We were supposed to be in Miami with Frank and a lot of our colleagues on May 15 and May 16. Unfortunately, we had to postpone until next year, but we decided to actually bring an experience online. Very similar to other events, but hopefully we can keep this. I would love your feedback at the end of the session, I love the fact that we're interactive and everybody can have a conversation. And I drop basically a coupon. I will email it to you, but Mix Rescue guest, and that will give you 50%. Ticket's going to be $20-$25. I don't know yet. So it'll be for $10. You'll be able to attend up to 10-15 sessions. And hopefully we'll give you special recognition because you're absolutely lovely. We have another 13 minutes before wrap up, so we can go over questions if anyone wants to talk. I have questions as well, but love if any of you have questions, go ahead.
Do you often sidechain kick, instrument, synth, or usually just bass? That is a great question. I actually do a lot of sidechaining. I do kick to bass, depending on the genre. I do a lot of electronic stuff. I get synth, that kind of stuff as well. But I also sometimes do it sidechaining instruments or vocals to the instrument. So when the vocal sings, kind of ducking certain instruments so that they have that space for the vocal to stick out. So this works really well on keyboards, guitars, things, horns, sometimes in that middle range. Anything that's in the same frequency range as the vocal, I'll sometimes sidechain. So when the vocal happens, those instruments get ducked and then the vocal can stick out. Same thing if you think about it, if you ever watch a sports game, whatever, basketball, and there's a crowd, and then when the announcer talks, the crowd gets turned down. That's all they're doing. So I'll do the same thing with music tracks. Sometimes I hear this technique called mid-side compression. When do people typically use it? Okay, so mid-side is not just compression. It's actually a bunch of different types of processes. And basically what you're doing is you're separating the middle of the music from the sides. So you have one middle and two sides. This is a technique that's used to make records feel wider, right? If everything across your stereo image is the same exact frequency, then everything can't be loud. But if you cut off some of the low end on the sides, all of a sudden the stuff that's on the sides seems brighter, right? And it'll make it seem like there's more detail on the sides, and it makes your record sound wider. Okay, so if you think of the shape of your record, instead of it being a square, like left to right square, it now becomes more like a V. So all your low end stuff is in the middle, and then all your high end stuff that's on the sides feels like it gets wider. And that's what mid-side is for. So you can do mid-side compression where you compress the middle and or the sides, or where you EQ the sides different than the middle. And that's what mid-side is, and it's really popular in mastering to make things feel bigger. I hope that answered your question. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, I got a question. So, as you know, I've been doing this for a while. I went to SAE, but I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. I'm trying to learn more techniques. When I go on YouTube and when I look stuff up, it's a lot of just basic stuff, and they're always trying to sell me something. I don't have a lot of money. It's like, oh yeah, let me just buy this for $150 and see what this is. Oh, let me buy this for a stack. So it's what do you suggest? What direction should I go to weed more into mixing and mastering, especially because I don't really have the money to go to other people. So I would want to, what I'm saying? I want to start a business, so yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that you have the fundamental stuff, Albert, just because I was your teacher, so I know. But at the end of the day, it's just practice. You got to practice. You got to mix as much stuff as possible. I think great resources that people don't look to, obviously, because it's not as popular, are things like Mix Magazine, Sound on Sound. When they do those mix rescue and the guys break down their mixes, that stuff is like, I read that stuff all the time. I get a lot of new stuff from those magazines. When I first started in the business, all 20 years ago, I read Mix Magazine like it was lunch. Like every day I read it religiously. And even sometimes I would read it and I didn't understand what they were talking about, but I would read it anyway. And then eventually at one point it would click and I'd be like, oh, that's what they were talking about. You know, things like mid-side, like not, and I'm like, I don't know, how do you do that? Things like parallel compression and just reading about it and then trying things and learning, you know, don't stop trying to learn stuff, but you got to practice. There's no amount of theory that's going to like get you to do the thing. I can tell you how to mix all day, but until you actually try it and you hear it for yourself, it doesn't work. So just keep practicing. Build a network of people so that when you get better, you have clientele. And you're probably going to have to do some stuff for free, but
yeah, I always do it because I don't feel like it's good. Like I know it's good and people give me credit, but it's like I don't feel right charging people. It's like
at some point you should charge people at something, you know. At this point, if they're not a big artist, maybe you guys can do. I mean, I do it now with people. Sometimes, hey, let me get 10% on the writers as opposed to paying me. They don't lose anything. You don't lose anything. Somebody's getting something out of it. So, you know, and if the song blows, then you guys all make money together. So, cool. Leanne asks, what is your recommendation for that issue when you put a limiter on a track and it makes some things louder, e.g. vocal to bass ratio? If I'm not doing my own mastering, should I be concerned about setting my mix up to not have that issue? Yeah, if you're not doing like a bunch of limiting or compression on your stereo track, the master track, I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you feel that you need to put a limiter on to get your track to sound at a certain level, you might just need some simple rebalancing of the track. So try to like get it as loud as you can without clipping, with just like level, like volume. You know, try to pan things, try to set, you know, things at a certain volume to get the most out of your track before you're putting a limiter. And if you're putting a limiter on, you shouldn't be getting like more than like 2 dB of compression out of it, or try not to. You know, if you're compressing like 4 or 6 dB on a limiter, then something's wrong, and you know, we've gone off the rails at this point. So I would definitely first, without it, try to balance out your track so it sounds as good as possible. Then if you need to just kind of goose it a little bit, make sure nothing goes over, go ahead. But I try not to lean on it like a crutch. You're welcome. KOSHL asks, do you ever mix into the compressor limiter on the stereo bus from the start so you can hear how it sounds, or do you put it on at the end? When I mix, I typically have, like I was talking about, my buses, so like my drum bus, my, you know, instrument bus, my vocal bus, and usually those have compressors on them from the beginning, and then I'll mix into those compressors, and then the one on the stereo bus I usually add at the end. I've never like mixed into the compressor like for the entire mix. It's just, I've never done it, so I'm not comfortable doing it, so I don't do it.
I think we're going to be at time. So what I wanted to do now is a couple of things. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. I'm going to launch a poll. It's going to take pretty quickly. I wanted to ask you what you thought, you know, about today's session, and if you would recommend Music Expo to friends and colleagues, because it's important for us to know if we are good or if we suck. Bluntly said. And we always try to improve, and your feedback is very important. So if you should be seeing the poll on your screen. If you don't mind taking a quick, we ask you to rate us from 1 to 10, and 1 being the lowest, unlikely you will recommend us, and 10 you will most likely recommend us. And then I'd love to, you guys actually contributed to this session for basically Frank's time and expertise. I really appreciate, and let us know what you thought about the pricing of this session. This is actually the first time we price an advanced session like this ever. So we'd love to hear. Do you see the poll on your screen, or you don't? Because I'm not seeing any results.
I'm seeing
Maybe-
results. It's saying 85% voted.
I'm not
Six
seeing
of
it.
It says 6 of 7 have voted.
It tells me
and
0.
Well, I don't know. I'm seeing it.
Okay.
It's
I
almost
voted.
Okay, everybody voted. Okay, well, it tells me 0. So I guess you guys just see better than me. This is so weird.
I see. Yeah, it says 85% voted. So there's a few people who didn't vote.
There's maybe one person we didn't vote. Can we get Ayo? Are you back up with us? Can you vote? All right.
Can we get it to 100 guys?
Yeah,
Come
I
on.
voted already.
Okay, great. I'm literally share results. I'm not seeing the results. So you guys, you're lucky. I'm not seeing anything.
You're not seeing the poll or anything?
Oh no, I'm not seeing who has voted. What were the results? I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, Loic.
Okay.
I've got it.
You got it? That's so funny. I literally see 0. So that's why I kept asking. Okay. The other thing I would like you to do is please email us. Your feedback is super important. If you can email us your request and feedback, if you have any comments, I like this, I didn't like that. Can we have more of this? Can we have more of that? Do we want more of Frank? Do we want have enough of Frank and we want someone else? Do you want someone else and we want the Frank with it?
No, Frank.
Would you like me to wear a Hawaiian shirt next time?
Absolutely. But we love feedback. We love offering session like this or other type of sessions. We also, as you know, we have free sessions on Thursdays, and you're all welcome to join. This session will be available. It's going to take some time to compress, but to basically to render. But then I'm going to upload it to YouTube, unlisted link, and I will email all of you with a link so you can watch it as much as you want. But I want to thank KOSHL and Albert for submitting their tracks. If you're interested in doing something similar in the future, you can submit your track as well. Please let your friends know. Take advantage of the coupon. Take advantage of the coupon for May 16 and 15. Anna, drop a link to Audio Mover. I think you can download the free trial. So there's a link. And on this, we're going to wrap up. What I wanted to ask all of you is actually to thank Frank for his time today. Maybe a little clap on the camera or in the chat or wherever. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank.
So Frank, you work with Music Expo, or is you're just a guest?
Nah, Loic is my best friend. What are you guys talking about?
Facts. Nah, because this is definitely dope. And if you guys are doing this like every week, like you said, like I mean, due to the Rona, see how my bank account is set up.
No, we're offering every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We're offering free sessions. And here with Frank, Frank, I'm so glad he says I'm his best friend.
Aww, that's love.
We met at Music Expo 3 years ago and over 3 years ago. And actually we kept chatting and, with the fact that, this is the first person I called to say, hey, we have to cancel Miami. But we're discussing about what to do, and we said, why don't we try to do some live stream so we get a chance not to continue the spirit and supporting the music community, but also to hang, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to do, is we want to hang with cool people. So I've been hanging with him 3 or 4 times already since April 4th, which is fun. So, but no, it's great also to have you see some familiar faces, meet new ones. This is why we do it. So I'm glad you guys enjoy it, and hopefully we see you soon. And on this,
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Peace. I'm gonna call you, Frank.